Welcome to In the Spotlight. I'm Eric Townell. One of the great musical attractions of the Finger Lakes in summertime is the Finger Lakes Chamber Music Festival, started several years ago by artistic director Richard Alden Clark. It was my pleasure to travel to Penn Yan to visit with Richard and to hear about the 2015 festival. Here's the interview we recorded. Good afternoon, Richard. Thanks for this time together.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Has it been a great festival this year?
Oh, great summer.
Okay.
Really great summer. Lots of terrific concerts, wonderful audiences.
Wow. Now, how many concerts do you do in a summer with the Finger Lakes Chamber Music Festival?
Wow. We start late April with the school concerts, and there were 5 of those. And then we skip a period. My group is in New York doing Carnegie. Then we come back in June with a Baroque concert, and then an Americana concert at the 4th of July, piano concert, art concerts, park concert, more educational concerts. I would say there are probably 10 concerts.
10 concerts in a season?
Yeah, at least 10. And then if you add in the educational, there's another 5 on top of it, 6.
Wow. Now, if people wish to go to a website right now while we're talking, what website should they visit to learn about the Finger Lakes Chamber Music Festival?
Fingerlakes-music.org.
Fingerlakes-music.org.
Or just do a Google search for Finger Lakes Chamber Music Festival.
That's great. And you're the artistic director?
I am.
Well, that's terrific. And how long have you been in this position?
This is our 13th season that we just finished with the official festival. And we started with some little concerts and some educational things before the festival fully formed.
I see. And you mentioned some things like a 4th of July concert. Are there certain concerts you do every year that people should watch for?
Theme concerts. Always near the 4th of July, we go to the Curtis Museum in Hammondsport, do an Americana type program. 4 years in a row now, we've been at the courthouse at Penn Yan. Usually it's an outdoor concert, weather permitting, and that's been electric violins from Bach to rock.
Fantastic. Yeah. And for the 4th of July, people are celebrating. What should they go hear?
Oh, that program always has some Gershwin, Copeland. We did one of my own compositions featuring the soprano saxophone with string quartet. And we had some very interesting rock and roll arrangements for string quartet. We did Paint It Black. We've done Carry On, Wayward Son. Mm-hmm. We've done Purple Haze. We've done Beatles. But also, some real gems like music by Leroy Anderson. Gershwin's always a favorite.
Right.
And not an arrangement, but he wrote the lullaby for string quartet, which was published after his death. And so people sometimes forget the classical side of Gershwin.
That's interesting.
And I love it. I mean, he was such a great, well-rounded artist.
Mm-hmm. And so you've mentioned Copeland and Gershwin and Leroy Anderson and some American pop groups. Is this a focus of the festival?
I like quite a smorgasbord of composers.
Okay.
And the thing that I find the most interesting is when you can put works from hundreds of years apart together. Mm-hmm. When you can put something jazz with a classical piece, rock and roll with an Americana piece or some sort of ethnic piece. I think the mixing of the repertoire is what I'm most interested. A composer that I've done a few recordings of, Henry Cowell, who's really such an important American composer, kind of forgotten on the concert stage, always said, I want to live in the whole world of music. And that's been a mantra for me from probably the time I picked up that violin and haven't put it down since.
And for the festival, are American composers well represented in the
Heavily, yes. I'm very much dedicated to American music. That's been my calling in life. And, personally, I love playing Brahms and Dvorak and Beethoven, you name it, we play it. But American music, especially romantic, accessible American music of the 20th century. Copeland doesn't need any more performances because everybody loves Copeland, but we love playing them.
Sure.
But composers like William Grant Still.
Yes.
Alec Wilder, who's a Rochester native. I did 3 albums of music of his. It's
fantastic.
Brilliant, wonderful music. This should be a household name, especially for New Yorkers.
Agreed.
But except in our circles, he's kind of been overlooked, forgotten. And I've been a champion of forgotten composers. Victor Herbert's another one of my favorites to push. David Amram.
I was just going to say.
I've recorded several albums of his music. Seymour Barab, who recently passed away, 93 years old.
Right.
Just tons of American, but again, mixed in with standards, romantic favorites, Baroque music, traditional, folk music, ethnic music, and I like to get out the electric fiddle and do some fiddling, play some bluegrass, and because our roots are there as well.
For sure.
And people forget, Brahms liked fiddling too. If you just listen to the third movement of the Brahms Violin Concerto, you go, Brahms liked fiddling. So I try to incorporate that in the festival.
That's fantastic. And if people come to the festival, where are they going to find you playing? What kind of venues?
What's great is we don't have traditional concert halls up here in this part of the Finger Lakes, and so we're in a winery, we're in a museum, we're in a church, we're in a chapel on Keuka Lake, we're out on the courthouse steps in a park. It's just great stuff. I played at a festival once in New York where the parameters were you're doing something artistic, but you cannot do it in the space for which it was meant. So if you're going to play a concert, it can't be in a hall. So we did a piece about a chess game and did it in a chess club with people playing chess while we played. And I thought, in the Finger Lakes, what's better than to do a classical concert or a mixed program in a winery while people are drinking wine or sitting near the lake or sitting on the courthouse steps or, any one of these wonderful things. When we play for the kids, we go into an elementary school, play in the gymnasium, and they'll sit in circles around the musicians. So they're close enough to just reach up and touch, and they're in big circles so they see every angle of the cello, the viola, the violin. They can interact with living music. Sometimes, and don't get me wrong, I love the concert hall experience, but sometimes it can have more of a funereal sense. Everybody in their tuxedos, and we're all so serious, and we're at a distance, and don't talk, and don't, it's sort of... For some people, that can be a turnoff. When you want that, great. Go to the Met, go to the Philharmonic, go to Carnegie Hall, go to these great concerts we have by all these wonderful arts institutions up here. But in the summer, come let it hang out in the Finger Lakes.
That sounds like a great idea. So who plays in your ensembles?
Most of my musicians are from New York, from my Manhattan Chamber Orchestra, though I've brought in people from all over the place. Chamber musicians are that funny crop who just like to play with people. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
I mean, I think every time you play chamber music, it's an experiment. And you try it. How many times are you willing to try it? And you see, okay, well, this person's really good at this repertoire, but they're not so good at that repertoire. Like I'm a violinist and a violist. There are pieces that I play on the viola exceptionally well. And pieces on the violin that I don't play so well. So I really pick and choose. And then I'm the same with my players. So they rotate frequently. And I always reflect after a season or after a couple of years of doing it, this was a great experiment, but now I need to change and do this kind of combination, or these two violins, they don't quite, this bass player is great, but he doesn't do the jazz as well. This singer is fantastic, but it's too operatic for spirituals and folk, and so you're always playing around and giving people an opportunity to express themselves. And I think we do that the same with the composers we pick too. As conductors, we all have our kind of bias. We all have our favorites, and sometimes you go, you know what? This program is self-indulgence. I've picked it for me. I hope you like it. And other programs, we pick just for the audience. Please, you're really going to like this. Come give us a try. We're not going to scare you away with something too crazy. And hope that whatever we do sticks. But I'd say it's a living, breathing work of art.
Now, who comes to the audiences in this area?
There are a lot of people who are just here on the summer, who are visitors. There are tourists who come up. There's a lot of locals, especially artists. We've really clicked with a lot of painters and photographers and all of that. We've made a nice connection with the schools. I'd like to see more of them coming to concerts, but that's where you start, grassroots. Community folk have been wonderful. I think sometimes... for lack of a better word, local folks sometimes think, well, maybe this chamber music thing isn't for us. Maybe that's for those who have the homes on the lake, those who are... And they couldn't be more wrong. I never felt out of place as a kid going to the Met when I was in my schoolboy khakis and couldn't afford anything else, and there were people in mink coats and their tuxedos. I never felt out of place because art is for everybody. And I might have been just a standing room ticket at the Met, but man, did I belong there just as much as anybody else. And I'd like people to know that they belong here. And if they just sit up close to a string quartet, they're going to fall in love with it and they're going to want it more.
That's fantastic. And that's the idea of chamber music. I think sometimes the name chamber music confuses people. What is chamber music, really?
Well, we've forgotten that in ancient history, to me, 100, 200, 250 years ago, chamber music wasn't done on the main concert stage. It was done in people's homes. It was done in the parlor, the salon. Okay, it might have been the aristocracy that had it, but you did big opera works and all this. Look how many times between acts for operas they wanted more music, so they had a string quartet they had, but it wasn't seen as the formal snooty thing that we've unfortunately turned it into at times. And now, so more than ever, groups like Kronos and others have tried so hard to break down those barriers and say, hey, we can get in your face with rock and roll and with new music, but we'll also play something medieval. And we want to play it right here in your face. We want you right here next to us, rather than, oh no, you go to Carnegie Hall and you sit, 30, 40, 50 feet away from us and you're very quiet and don't rattle your program. My feeling is, come have a glass of wine, or 2 or 3 if you're not driving, sit up close, and just enjoy it. And at intermission, talk to the musicians, talk to people in the audience, get to know. It's a happening. And I think that's what message we want to get out there. Come and experience a gathering rather than a formal concert, and come as you are, whatever that may mean, as you are. I work with a group of artists down in northeastern Pennsylvania, and we do these programs called social synesthesia, which is just musicians showing up and artists showing up. They don't know what we're going to play. We don't know what they're going to do. They paint, they draw, they do whatever. They're eating and drinking while it's going on. It's a big social happening while we're playing. And we may be playing Bach or Corelli, or I might be improvising with a theremin, playing on my electric violin. And people are just loving it. I want that kind of environment for our chamber concerts. I don't want it to be a snooty event. I want it to be the people's music.
So that there's an immediacy of the artistic experience.
Yeah. And people forget, if they really look at the background of some of our composers, which I won't go into, they didn't have such snooty lives, there was Brahms playing piano in a brothel, you know what I mean? So come hear a piano quartet. We're not going to do it in a brothel. But, it might be at the chapel at Keuka College. It might be in a high school auditorium. We might be doing a quintet or a string quartet in the winery. There are no barriers. And the musicians are the same way. They want to socialize with the audience. They want to drink a glass of wine with people afterwards. So many of the audience know my musicians personally. Some have requested to have those musicians stay at their homes when they come up to do the program. So it's a social experiment as well as an artistic experiment.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so you mentioned educational programs. Describe those a little bit.
Oh, these are the most fun. This is the most important thing I do as a musician, is play music for kids. I make sure when I program something that the works are not too long, so I can do many of them in a short period of time, and that they span centuries, ethnicities, and purposes. So that, again, they may get a little jazz piece. They might get a rock and roll piece. They're definitely going to hear a little bit of Mozart and be told how he started composing when he was 4 years old. They might hear a little bit of Beethoven, but then they also might hear a Leroy Anderson piece or Copland's Hoedown, or I might fiddle for them. I might play a little Baroque piece for them. And then I talk to them about it. It's really fun how many of these kids, even though they're maybe 7, 8 years old, have heard of the Beatles. And when you play Eleanor Rigby for them and tell them, this is the first rock and roll piece ever, they just use a string quartet. There's no drums, there's no guitar. And then here's a string quartet by Mozart. And here's how it's similar. And here's a little jazz piece. And now we're going to do this. Remember, for the kids, we played a piece by Jerry Goldsmith, one of the great Hollywood film composers, called The Gremlin's Rag. Okay, this was back from 1984. All these kids knew it. They knew the little character and all that. It let me talk about ragtime, how jazz got started in America, a string quartet, and then we played Vivaldi for them. And I thought, where else are you going to hear Vivaldi and the Gremlin's Rag back to back? And then a piece by Leroy Anderson called Horse and Buggy, because the kids see the Mennonite things and all, making these connections musically and into their lives, and how any of them can play an instrument, how any of them can write music, how any of them can do this. Doesn't matter. I'm a product of the public schools. I started the violin in the 4th grade at a little tiny elementary school in Appalachia, New York, for God's sake. And it's changed my life. I travel the world playing music. I've made recordings. I play Carnegie Hall, all because of some teacher in 4th grade talking about the instruments, sticking a violin in my hand, and there it went. So if one of those kids picks up an instrument, of the thousands we've played for over the years, it was worth everything.
Absolutely. Now, do your players teach also while they're here? They all teach.
We don't do so much teaching up here because, it's summer, and though kids have come and played for them, or have at the camps have come up and talked about things. I've had kids ask me about how to get into college for music, what they prepare for auditions, if somebody wants to compose, who they should study, what kind of music they might want to listen to, or pointing them in the right direction. But all of us are connected with institutions. Some teach on the high school level. I teach at a university. Others have private music studios where they enjoy. I used to teach at the Manhattan School of Music, which I loved, in the pre-college division, because those kids, before they were making the choice of what college they're going to go to, that's the most vital time in their musical lives. And I've had such a great success with some of those youngsters who have now gone off to major symphony orchestras. And so it's a thrill to be part of that legacy.
Oh, that's terrific. That's great. And so intimate settings and American composers and a wonderful education program. Is there something else about the Finger Lakes Chamber Music Festival people should know?
New music.
New music.
New music. Works created just for up here. We just did a program called Art Inspires Music.
Beautiful.
We took 4 local artists who submitted different works, and then I picked 3 composers plus myself, and each of us chose something to write a piece to. And then we presented them with the works of art at Keuka College in the library, and it was really exciting to give birth to new works of art. Sometimes we also forget, and classical musicians need to be better at this, sometimes we keep projecting. You want to hear what's old. You want to hear what's familiar. You want to hear the same old things. The only way to get you in is if I play a piece you've heard by Dvorak or Tchaikovsky. But all through history, people wanted to hear the new opera, the new symphony, the new concerto. And we haven't been great at getting that message. I'm talking about the whole world of classical music.
Yes.
We're getting better at it, especially those who have reached outside of the boundaries and said, hey, yeah, I play great Mozart, but you know, I'm going to play this Scott Joplin tune. I'm going to play Jimi Hendrix for you on my violin. And then people go, oh, wait a minute. This is a real person. This is someone who's now speaking to me, not on this kind of level. Well, I play classical music. Where did that even come from? All the classical musicians were peasants. All the composers were peasants. You know what I mean? How did it become this lofty, Somehow the message got mixed up. And so so when we bring new works here and play them, I think that's really exciting. It's come and experience something brand new that we don't even know if it's going to be any good. And you as the audience get to decide if it's good. You get to decide if you ever want to hear it again, rather than us saying, oh, this is a very significant, important work, and you should I don't know. We just learned it. It just got finished last week, and now we're playing it for you. I think that's awesome. As a composer, I love that. I often wonder if anything I've written is any good. And the only way I know is if anybody ever wants to hear it again. And if they do, great. But if not, well, keep trying,
And have you written pieces on local topical themes?
Yeah, we just did my Finger Lakes Suite, which I premiered at Carnegie Hall, which was really fun. Trumpet and string quartet. One movement is Cayuga Lake, another movement is Seneca, Keuka, and then, of course, you have to do something for the winery. So the last movement was Uncorked, and it was a lot of fun. And trumpet player, a very well-established trumpet player on the East Coast, is now programming that for other things because the work made a connection. So how cool if down in the D.C. area or if in New York City or if in wherever he's at his university, he plays the work and somebody there has never heard of the Finger Lakes. He goes, well, what is this Cayuga? Well, what is it? And maybe it sparks an interest, or they like wine, or they have wine at the reception, and there's a movement about wine, and then maybe they say, well, I'll go on the internet and learn something about the wine. Who knows where these connections go? One of my composers loves somebody's art so much, they want to do more music based on that. And they said, let's do a program like this in the city. Well, you have enough musicians and artists in the city, why wouldn't you do that? No, we did it up here in the Finger Lakes.
And the Finger Lakes wine is going down to the city, and so people are considering vacation.
Yeah, it's like this social networking, but it's got an artistic tie. I mean, to me, that's more interesting than anything else. One of my musicians once made a kind of funny quote about Carnegie Hall. Said, it's nice to play in Carnegie Hall, but when you come up here and you play at Camp Corey, or you play at Camp Good Days for these kids who've had suffered terrible traumas or illnesses and things like that, and you see a child moved by a slow movement of Mozart, or you play their favorite song from a Disney movie, or you play Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and then you demonstrate an instrument to. I had a harpist up once who played for them, and then he let the kids come up and try his harp. Fantastic. Can you imagine somebody in the Philharmonic going, here, play my Strad, But they all got to come up and play the harp. I'll tell you, it didn't matter how well anybody performed or whether it was of artistic merit or whatever, any concert ever, any place. Seeing these kids who had had cancer treatments sitting by Keuka Lake playing on a harp, I mean, come on. This life is art, and that was a wonderful experience. To me, that's what inspires me.
And do you work on other things while you're here? For instance, I see a lot of music in front of you.
Yeah, well, I'm writing an opera.
Okay.
I'm always writing. I've had thank God, Tchaikovsky had his sponsor, Beethoven had his commissions. I have one sponsor who has provided Carnegie Hall for my ensemble every year.
Fantastic.
And 3 years in a row now, and I'm booked for 16, and it looks like the recital hall for 17, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx it. And I've written 2 world premieres for each of those concerts. So as a composer, I've had 6 world premieres in 3 years. I'll have 10 in 5 years, which is unheard of because of one person saying, I like your music. I'm going to give you a chance. I mean, it's a living gift. And so I'm always writing. I'm always writing for people I meet, I have fun with. I was associated with the author Kurt Vonnegut. He was a dear friend. And shortly before his death, he gave me the rights to his play, Happy Birthday, Wanda June. And
what's the title again?
It's called Happy Birthday, Wanda June. And I'm happy to say the opera in its piano vocal form is almost done. It'll be getting a world premiere next season, and it's going into workshop this fall and in the spring with 2 different companies. And WSKG in Binghamton is doing a little documentary on it. And it looks like it's going to get its world premiere in Indianapolis, knock on wood. So far, so good. I don't want to jinx it. But and hopefully it'll get played in a lot of places. But it's not your typical opera with somebody like Kurt Vonnegut writing the libretto. But in this stage of my life where I've come through with performing and with teaching, I'm at a point now where I just want to write music as much as possible. I mean, I still perform, of course, but I'm one of those enigmas, a conductor who really prefers chamber music. You know, a lot of conductors don't do chamber music
True.
because they're used to being the dictator, you know. And I love conducting, but if I never conducted again, it wouldn't break my heart. But if I never played chamber music again, I couldn't function. And so this festival for me is the highlight of what I like to do. And again, as fun as it is to play at Carnegie Hall, it's just as much fun to play in a winery. It's just as much fun. When we got a picture of like 350 elementary school kids sitting around the quartet in a gymnasium, I said, tell me what beats that.
Yeah.
A full house at Carnegie doesn't beat that.
Wow.
It just doesn't. You know, we always have the New York Times showing up and writing reviews down in New York, and you think, oh my God, are they going to hate my piece? Are they going to think this is, whatever? Are they going to rip us to shreds?
Right.
And you say, you know what? Those kids come in with no preconceived anything, and they hear this beautiful program that's played just out of sharing music. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah,
it really doesn't. And so I'm happy to say that's where my artistic senses are now. And I think that's why I'm writing more and more music now, because it frees up something in you that makes you explore every avenue as an artist.
And playing chamber music in the summer feeds that.
Oh yeah, it's the best. I want it all year long. I just wanted to. I keep finding more and more opportunities and venues for concerts and things, because I'd rather either pick up the violin or the viola and play a trio or a quintet than and it's just as much fun to conduct a full symphony orchestra. I enjoy it very much, but there's something more personal, more involved when you've handpicked these couple of musicians you're going to spend time with and explore a piece of music. And it's the exploration of it that's interesting. It's the experiment of it. And again, it doesn't always work. And the audience can sense that sometimes too. And they go, wow, that group just really, there was this energy that you can just feel when you're sitting there. And you see the musicians looking at each other when they're playing. And then other times you go, it's always great playing. I'm very good players, but there's a chemistry. It's like what makes a great jazz combo work, when somebody can improvise and you can really support them and feed off of it, and then somebody else gets their turn. It's not like that when you're conducting a symphony. It's like, this is my tempo, this is where we are, you're doing it my way, and it's not a democracy, it's a dictatorship. Chamber music's not that way. It's the ultimate form of democracy. I often thought if we could get some of these school administrators or our community leaders or politicians, stick them in a string quartet, it'd be a lot of fun to see what might happen and how things might change, because you learn a lot about how to interact with people when you just have to sit there and make music with somebody
and deliver that to someone for their entertainment and for their education,
and hope to share that passion with them. I think the one thing that we've been really successful at is I think a lot of the audience takes away the passion and the feeling of what we're doing, and they've discovered new composers because of it, or they've rediscovered composers, people that have been forgotten. I'll never forget playing a Chasson piano quartet that most of them have never heard, and it's, who's Chasson? This guy was 44 years old when he died. He had a bike accident of all things back in the 1800s. This brilliant composer, gone, a couple of works, and this piano quartet was sensational, and it just had so much passion and power and beauty to it that the audience was off its feet, and they just responded to it in a way I couldn't have imagined. And I put it on the first half kind of like, okay, you don't know this piece, but you're going to love the second half. And exactly the reverse happened. The first half just had everybody, this was incredible, that no matter what was on the second half was anticlimactic to it. That was incredible, you know, and there's a piece that was already 160, 170 years old, and it had that kind of effect on the audience. I loved experiencing that.
Do you accept outside funding in the Finger Lakes Chamber
Oh,
Music
yeah,
Festival?
not only accept it, we beg for it. One of the things you learn as a musician is you become a very good beggar. Because without people support, it doesn't happen. You know, a concert ticket never covers an event. People look at shock when I say, oh, this event we just did in Carnegie, week of rehearsing, hiring the orchestra, the music that's done, Carnegie Hall, and then in the recording studio the week after, easily cost $180,000. Oh, well, it's like, it was $20,000 just to walk on the stage at Carnegie. You haven't tuned the piano. You haven't had all the extra technicians you need. You haven't paid a musician a single salary yet. You haven't rehearsed. And no, just the bare fee is $20,000. Now we start from there, and doing the recordings and all those kind of things. It gets very expensive. So when you put on a concert, the amount of time rehearsing, tuning the piano, the requirements for the music, if we're rehearsing down in New York, rehearsal space, travel fees for the musicians, feeding the musicians, housing the musicians, you start adding everything up and you go, okay, how does a small concert ticket pay for that? And especially if you're saying kids, if we bring in the kids, they come in free, you know. It's not about selling out the arena, to have something happen. It's let's offer the community a beautiful performance of something.
Fantastic.
Experience it, see if it happens. And luckily, the generosity of the board makes that happen, because without those contributions and without funding and those sorts, none of this would happen. It couldn't.
No, it certainly sounds like a very, very stimulating and worthwhile program.
It's incredible.
Congratulations to you. So tell us again, if we want to learn more about the Finger Lakes Chamber Music Festival, how to find you.
Well, the best way is the website, which is fingerlakes-music.org. And thank God for Google. If you just type in Finger Lakes Chamber Music Festival, or if you type in my name as the artistic director, sites will come up, recording things, performances that we've done. You can like the Finger Lakes Chamber Music Festival on Facebook. There's just all sorts of ways to connect now, which thank God. And we beg people to take advantage of it, especially the kids. They're masterminds at technology. They should be connecting with us and coming to concerts and experiencing this.
And they can buy their tickets and make a donation there as well.
Absolutely. Donations always welcome. It's a tax-exempt organization, so it is a tax write-off for folks. And corporate sponsorship is always welcome too. Right. We're bringing a great gift into the Finger Lakes, and we're making it available to every single human being here. And so those who are capable of stepping up to help it, what their money does, when they can see the look on a child's face in a school, when they can see at the camps, especially Camp Good Days, Camp Whitman on Seneca Lake, had people with all varying sorts of different levels of learning disabilities, some with severe handicaps, sharing the music. There was a young man who seemed almost comatose in his chair until we started playing, and he started dancing, and he was experiencing the music. There's not words to describe how he's experiencing. As soon as the music stopped, he almost folded right back in. It spoke to him. Yeah. Seeing people, when we went into one of the hospital centers there, people with severe levels of disease and different things, maybe of dementia and Alzheimer's, respond when they hear a familiar piece. When I played "Oh Danny Boy," people started singing. People woke up to this kind of thing. Music has an incredible power, and it needs to be shared on many boundaries. But we also need to say to those, if you can support this in some way, you have to, because if you see what it's doing for the folk, what we share, you want to be a part of it. You want to say, I helped make that happen.
It's an experience I've had, and they're wonderful concerts, so congratulations to you. And thank you so much for being my guest today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks. I hope to see people in the Finger Lakes this summer. It's worth it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.